You're listening to SM Media, the number one place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Scottish Football Show right here on SN Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. Wilson's here with us as well. Wilson, how are we this weekend?
Fine, thank you. Been a busy couple of weeks with international games, and then obviously my local amateur team as well, plus the kids' football. But delighted to be back on to talk about the big talking points of this weekend.
You're happy with the start, Stuart? They've made 15 goals in the cup, by the way, and then that's a 7-1. Is it 7-1 against the league leaders?
6-0.
6-0, sorry.
No, the start's not good enough. We've had 2 home games and we picked up 1 point. So they got a roasting at training on Wednesday, and with a bit of fell back in their faces yesterday with a draw. But next week they'll be getting fitness sessions Monday and Wednesday. Very
good. Rory Lloyd's here as well. Rory, how are we this weekend?
Yes, all good. All good. Looking forward to discussing. It's always good to have the domestic stuff back after the international break. Good wee international, good wee spell for Scotland, which was always good, and good to get all the domestic stuff back at the weekend there.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to move on to talking about Scotland before we touch on the domestic action. Wilson, 6 points from 9, a defeat against Denmark followed by a win against Moldova at home and a massive victory against Austria away. Overall, was it a good international break?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you always, with these seeded groups now, you always look at the one team that you know is going to pretty much win the group. You know, your team from pot A, and for me that was Denmark. They did so well at the Euros. After the couple opening games, good team, good players. So you're not expecting much, especially when you go away to these places. I think at a Fulham it might be a wee bit different depending if they need points, or we will need the points certainly. But I'm not grumpy, about the Denmark result. On top of that, I don't think we possibly deserved anything from the game either. The second half showing was certainly better than the first. But I think from the 6 points from even home to Moldova, 1-0 or 10-0, 3 points, folk grump about a 1-0 home win against Moldova. I don't. You win the game and that's it. And I think the Austria result's massive, because I think it was between, us and them to hopefully finish second. I mean, anything less than 9 points from the next 3 is, I think that's a wee bit of a failure. But I'm very, very confident they'll get those 9 points. And then we'll see where we are when Denmark come to Hampden in November.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's put Scotland in a good position. Rory, obviously those 3 games that are coming up are massive, but how much confidence will they take over a victory against Austria?
Well, if Wilson's no grumpy, then something's went right. But no, listen, it was a strong international break, and I agree with Wilson. I think if you don't follow that up in Austria, there's a lot of questions around the Moldova game. Whereas, if you're going to places like Austria and winning, then a 1-0 home victory against Moldova is enough. I think as well, what I would say is you look at other results in the group. Us getting a 1-1 draw over in Israel, and you look at some of the teams that have went there and struggled. Then you look at Denmark's result, 5-0 to beat Israel. So I think if you look across the group as a whole, we're pretty much where we as a nation would, I say, expect to be. I think Israel and Austria would probably also expect to be second, but we are leading the way at the moment. I think 6 out of 9, as Wilson touches on there. Denmark had a good Euros. Obviously what happened at the first game was horrible, but I think that had a kind of bearing on their first kind of couple of games there. And they're the strongest team in the group. I expect them to win it. And we're in pole position for second now. And as Wilson says, it would be interesting, it's that kind of Scottish mentality. You go into those games fearing the worst, and then you come out the other side going, if we can beat Israel at Hampden, then we've got Moldova, then we might just finish first if we can beat Denmark. That type of idea. But let's just, the boring old cliche, let's just, with the international stuff, let's just take it one game at a time. Let's try and finish second and see if we can progress to the playoffs like we did for the Euros.
Wilson, we can have a wee debate about Steve Clarke after the Denmark game for his tactics. Giving him criticism for his first game in the three group games. You've got to give him credit for the way he handled the third game. I thought he got it spot on against Austria.
Yeah, and sometimes he kind of responds under pressure. And again, I mean, I know we had that on our chat as well. You know, his record doesn't look good. I mean, let's be honest. I know there's a lot of kind of nonsense in social media coming from sets of supporters that maybe get something against him. But in all honesty, at a point I thought it was right. Any other Scotland manager with that record could, if they hadn't gone to the Euros as such, would have been on a sugary peg. But I think these results now, albeit regardless of what way you got there, we were still at the Euros. Disappointing show, apart from the England game, yeah, probably, but we still got there. And we look on course to finish second in this group, which I think was an expectation. You know, I don't think we were going to win it. And I think it's one of these things, he'll pull a result out when required. And I think, you know, the players themselves, they must be hungry. So, yeah, he's got his tactics spot on. You know, you can argue with the personnel all day. But I think the players have got that hunger and desire now. I think we went through it a long time where players turned up for Scotland to get away from the wife and Wayne sometimes. You know, they weren't really that keen, and, you know, they didn't look as if they were desperate to be there, or desperate to do anything with the national team. Whereas now, I think everyone's got their hunger. Grant Hanley, the last two games, I think deserves a mention. I thought he was excellent. Yeah. The two games, you know, there was some that possibly didn't, you know, perform too well over the two games. But as I say,
end in mind, do you want to mention?
The first game against Moldova, I thought Ryan Christie's poor again. I don't really see. You know, I think he kind of struggles for a position, his best position. In some of these games, I thought Gilmour the first half against Denmark non-existent, but he come onto a game. His technical ability was incredible against Moldova at Hampden. I was at that game, and some of his touches and things as well. But I'm old school. I think my centre midfielder should be crashing into people and tackling and all that, but I don't think that's quite his game. I think he's still a bit slight, but I just don't know when he plays, if we don't have kind of runners up front, possibly two up front, it's because that he wants to slide balls in behind. He wants to break lines with passes, and I don't think that's Adams or Dykes' game. I think they're more getting it and driving it. People are holding it up, etc. But I didn't think he was particularly poor. I think he was good. Patterson played okay at Hampden. I thought after the first 50 minutes, I thought I would get O'Donnell on the now. I thought he gave the ball away frequently, but he grew into the game a lot better. Dykes was good both games as well. You know what you're getting from him, and I think to be all honest, and I've only seen quick snippets today, but Craig Gordon is outstanding. You know, I was amazed when he didn't play. I know he wasn't getting much a game at Celtic, but I was, you know, flabbergasted that Marshall got the shout. And David Marshall did well, but Craig Gordon's 10 times the goalkeeper David Marshall is, and I think that's a big difference. I think the defenders are a wee bit more confident having Craig Gordon behind them as well, and I think that a wee bit of confidence grows from that. So I think all's going well, and as I say, I think we now expect as a nation 9 points from the next three to get us through it.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about Scotland when the next few games come up. Israel at home, Moldova away, and the Faroe Islands away. But we'll move into the domestic action that took place this weekend. We'll start with Dermot Park. Rangers left it late, were under the cosh, but managed to pull out a 2-1 victory against St Johnstone. Rory, we'll talk a lot about big game performances and big results, but how big a result was that for Rangers to get that victory up when they weren't at their best? St Johnstone were very stuffy, very effective. As always, St Johnstone are like that, very hard to score against, but Rangers got the job done, a big result. How big a result was that for Rangers on Saturday?
I think all things considered, it was a big result. You know, going 1-0 down, going to McDermott Park against a team which are, I think, listen, they've not had the best start to the season. I don't think they've won a game yet this season, other than the penalty win up at Arbroath. Don't get me wrong, you throw fixtures like Galatasaray away, etc. in there, then you come to realise possibly why they've struggled for a win. Mentally, it's no easy. I don't think going 1-0 down at St Johnstone and trying to win. However, Rangers managed to do it, and I think it's big. No, even necessarily that win. I think when it comes to similar such circumstances or situations later on in the season, it generates belief and it generates a confidence to go, do you know what? It might be the 85th minute, it might be the 89th minute, it might be the 91st minute. The result in isolation, I don't think would have had a huge impact. You know, they always the same at the Old Firm. It's a crisis if you don't pick up 3 points. However, that particular game in isolation, it's a big result. But I think the manner in which they won it, well, it was like almost like the Rangers of old, where last season they won it at Qatar. They probably didn't need to win the amount. They didn't need to win the amount of games they won, but it's that whole psychological battle. Rangers and Celtic nip and tuck. Rangers 1-0 down. All the Celtic fans watching it with 10 minutes to go. All the Celtic fans sit there thinking it's inevitable. Rangers will score. And then when it goes the other way, Celtic 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. Rangers fans are saying it's inevitable. Celtic will score. It had that little bit of a.
It was kind of very Walter Smithy, wasn't it? Like
it had that feel about it where, although Rangers weren't playing particularly well, it wasn't pretty on the eye. You just kind of knew they were going to come out on top. And like I said, I think that psychological and mentality they've got at the moment is probably it's probably the biggest thing that Steven Gerrard will take from it. What I will say is, though, there's no smoke without fire, and there's too many people saying, something's not quite right. The performances aren't quite there. Something's not quite sitting right. But one thing I will go back to is what I said last week about Ryan Kent, who is coming in for a little bit of criticism at the moment. He never hides. He takes the ball time and again. He gets moans, he gets groans, and he eventually wins a penalty, which was a penalty. He always goes back and gets the ball. And he's one of these players that, as I've said before, you get players that will go into their shell. They'll come off after 60 minutes because they're no effect in the game. Either turn up at home to St Johnstone, St Mirren, Ross County when they're 4, 5, 6-0 up. I know Wilson feels that Christie maybe falls into that category at times, or did. But when it comes to Kent, like I said, that's why he starts every game. That's why Gerrard really, I know he came off a couple of weeks ago, but really is very reluctant to take him off, because he will never hide. And it might take to the 90th minute. He might give the ball away to the 90th minute, but he will go and get that ball again, and he will go and try and make something happen again. And eventually, the law of averages suggests he's going to create an opportunity. And that's what happened on Saturday.
Wilson, Rangers picked up a victory. Obviously, Rory said there, it's a massive. It reminds you of the old days where kind of Walter Smith, where the teams would go 1-0 down and their character would win them the game and they would run to the cosh. But that was very reminiscent of the days, wasn't it? It was a big result for Rangers.
I think any win's a big result for Rangers, but you're right, it does take you back to the Walter Smith's day when they had referees in their pockets as well that gave them every decision going as well. So that didn't surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, I think that's the Old Firm's mantra as such. They've got to, if they play St Johnstone at home, for example, they're looking to beat them 3-4-0, and then when they go away, when there's maybe, probably not yesterday right enough, but when there's more home fans than away fans, but that probably wasn't the case yesterday at St Johnstone, then it does get hard because the home teams take a buzz. I mean, I always found that when Steve Clarke was at Kilmarnock and Rangers came calling, the crowd were a wee bit partisan. There was reduced numbers of away fans, and Kelly were the players were bouncing off the fans, and I think that's what got Kelly through a few games against the Old Firm in Steve Clarke's time. Those days are long gone, right enough. But yeah, as I said, I mean, I watched the highlights this morning. Yeah, I agree with Rory. It was a penalty, and then Tavernier's goal's good enough to win any game. It's a piece of brilliance from him, to be honest. But the only slight thing was, I know we kind of touched on this last night, but I think McLaughlin's challenge is a red card. I think if a player makes that tackle anywhere in the park, I think they would get sent off. I think it actually makes it worse because it's high, it's wild, the ball's nowhere. I'm not going down the route, it was a goal scored opportunity. I just think that's a wild.
That's just what I wondered. I don't know. The challenge is terrible, but is it a red card if it's a goal scored opportunity? That's the rules. I think,
for example, if Stephen Davis does that tackle in the middle of the park on a St Johnstone breakaway, I think he could have easily been red carded.
I think the challenge
is not. I don't think it's a goal scored opportunity. I don't think anything like that last man, except there was plenty of Rangers defenders back. But I thought it was wild. I don't think he even looked confident coming out for it.
I noticed that whole game actually. He did.
See by his reaction, he looked a bag of nerves. But as I say, a good win for Rangers, that, because obviously I'm a big advocate of Callum Davidson and his team, so it's good to go there and get a win.
They're very good at what they do, St Johnstone, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Their game plan is be stuffy, be effective, and try and score an early goal. And I think they mastered it brilliantly. Michael O'Halloran up front, that's probably what he was signed for Rangers to do. Be that man through the middle.
I think
he did it well. He did it well. Like it worked. But
I always think I've seen him a couple of times for St George's again, and I actually think he's one of these guys. I think he tries a bit hard against Rangers than he does week in, week out, to be fair. I think he's maybe got a wee bit of a point to prove. But again, from watching the half-hour highlights or whatever that I did, Rangers deserve to win the game.
Rory, I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but I think Rangers still.
I've not agreed with you much over this weekend, Pikey.
I still think though Rangers are a couple of gears to go. You've said that you don't think there's not been a performance where you can go, that's Rangers for last year, but they're grinding out results. But you still have that feeling watching Rangers that they're playing within themselves. Would you kind of go along with that?
Listen, I don't know if I would use the terminology they're playing within themselves. I think that suggests that they're choosing to be in second gear because they don't need to be in third and fourth gear. I think there's times where they need to be in third and fourth gear and they don't seem capable of doing it. Whether that's just a little bit of imbalance with some new signings coming in and taking a bit of time to settle, whether that's just getting used to some new faces, used to how each other play. I just think at the moment, whether that's a wee something that's going on in the dressing room that does not sit quite right, could be a number of things, and we could speculate about that all day. However, I don't think it's a case of they're running at half cock and they believe that they can win games doing that, and they've got more gears to go up. I think they've struggled at times to perform and hit the heights of last season, and they're always going to be compared to last season. But I just think something's not quite right. They've still got to find. Go on.
Sorry, Rory. Do you not think though they only need to up gears against Celtic and the Europa League games? I was going to touch on this when it comes to analysing the Celtic performance. Rangers and Celtic, I think, are miles ahead of the rest. Hearts and Hibs will put up a challenge, but when it comes to the end of the season, Celtic will be first and second.
Do you know how they're going to be harder? Like they're going to be harder games to win than maybe a Hibs away, where you're going to get more of the.
There will be, but of course there will be, but I think something. Again, no disrespect. I know we're talking about amateur football, but we played a team in the Scottish Cup last week that we were better than. There was no doubts about it. And the boys drop levels. They drop levels to, because they're winning easily as such. Now, Rangers weren't winning easily yesterday, but the quality Rangers have, I didn't feel, watching the game anyway. I know St John's went a goal up, but I don't think even Rangers felt under any pressure. I think they knew, as you say, Kent's getting on the ball, always tries things. I think Rangers knew they were going to win that game, even when they went a goal down, because they had so much of the ball. And
I don't agree with that. I
think Rangers and Celtic only need to up gears, 7-8 games a season.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Rangers have went to Tannadice and get beat. So they didn't. They've not. You're saying they're miles ahead. Celtic have played 5 games this season. They've won 3 and lost 2. Rangers have played 5 and they've already lost 1.
Over a league season. Well,
like I said, Rangers have went to Tannadice and they've got beat. So you could make the argument. Well, everyone thought when Dundee United went 1-0 up, Rangers were going to win the game, and they didn't.
I think Rangers' performance that day against Dundee United, you thought they could be in trouble given they lost the goal. Yesterday when they lost the goal
against Johnson. I think it's easy to say that after the event because they won. But yeah. I think at the time, every single Rangers fan up and down the country would be thinking this is Tannadice all over again. I really do.
Especially when you see, I've been critical of Goldson in the past couple of years. I think he can make mistakes, but you could see yesterday's presence was missed. Like you could see.
Possibly. I mean, O'Halloran's always gone. Wilson touched on it, maybe not having the same impact week to week. You look at the game and the way it is you're talking about, Rangers going to an Easter Road and maybe having more joy because and it's the same for an O'Halloran. If O'Halloran goes to Livingston with St Johnstone to play a game there, or Livingston come to St Johnstone, there's going to be no space in behind. It's going to be nothing tough. It's going to be horrible. So O'Halloran's going to have a much more opportunity to run at the back 4 of Rangers, and he absolutely bullied Hollander for the goal, both physically and technically. It was a great goal. Great finish.
I don't think Rangers back 4, maybe the exception of Tavernier. I don't think any of them had a good game at all.
I just think, I mean, I didn't see the game. I listened to it on the radio and I seen the highlights. Does Tavernier get past Marc because he's goal, or does he get past Marc because he defended well? I don't know. But what I would say is that I don't necessarily go along with the thinking that Rangers knew they were going to win that game. I think there would have been a lot of worried Rangers fans when St Johnstone went 1-0 up. However, I do agree with Wilson. Rangers and Celtic finished first and second at a canter. Of course they will. But I do think there'll be a lot more points dropped from Rangers this season than last season. That may seem like an obvious statement given the amount of points they picked up. But I do think if Celtic, I say get their act together. I don't mean it in any way. If they can get their new signings bedded in, they can get them playing the way they can play and the way Ange Postecoglou wants to play. I reckon if they can do that, then I think it'll be tight this year. I really don't see. I know Wilson disagrees. I really don't see Rangers running away with it.
Do you think there's potential, and this is only just me kind of thinking this, that Rangers put so much into last season that this is kind of the kind of aftermath of that, or they're not as sharp as they were because they've put so much into the effort last season to win the title? Do you think there's kind of merit to that theory, or
there's so much?
Because you can see they're not the same. They've not got the same intensity levels. They're not playing as well. There's
mentality and psychological. Actually, it's so underplayed in sport. It's a huge part of it. I don't think it's the effort levels and they're drained and I don't think it's anything like that. What I think is there was so much on the line last year. You could argue there's not as much on the line domestically this year. That's kind of what I
was getting at, yeah.
And it's a psychological thing, I think. I don't think it's a case of being tired or anything like that. But I do think as the season picks up momentum and then maybe Celtic pick up a win at Parkhead in an Old Firm, or Rangers drop a few more points, they galvanises a squad and they want to try and do better, etc. And as the season goes on, that will change, I do believe. But I do think that Rangers will drop a good few points this season. Hibs look good, Hearts look good, Celtic look good in flashes and things, and I do think that it'll be pretty close. And I don't see Rangers being anywhere near as comfortable week in, week out this season as they were last season.
We'll move on to Celtic. They picked up a 3-0 win against Ross County at home. Carter Vickers with a debut goal and Albion Ayeti with a double. Wilson, before we talk on the game, obviously Friday we heard the news that Don Mackay is no longer the chief executive. It was a bit of a bombshell. Obviously, when we've heard it's personal issues, and if that's the case, then we wish Don Mackay and his family all the very best. But stuff coming out in the past couple of days suggests there might be more to this than maybe a disagreement with Dermot Desmond, maybe a lack of ambition for the club. We don't know, but does this present a setback in the kind of the rebuild that we were talking about? Obviously, the past couple of months we've not been talking about the boardroom as much because Ange has been in, he's brought in his own players and things like that. They've been trying to get a new kind of look in the team. What do you think this kind of Mackay thing represents?
There's so many ways. There's actually a couple of things I've actually been sent, in the last kind of 5 or 6 hours that I should have actually read over in preparation for the show, but I've just been a bit busy. I think you can be cynical and look at it in terms of, was Dominic Mackay doing as he was told? Did he have the same kind of free rein that Peter Law seemed to have? Does Peter Law still have an input? Does Dermot Desmond actually have a clue what's going on? Is there somebody feeding back? Is there backstabbing going on, knowing that his replacement's already there? As I said, I think there's a lot going on that we'll probably never know. But surely at the start, when it was the whole shambolic nature of appointing a manager for a club the size of Celtic, if Dominic Mackay is to be in part of the rebuild as such, then it's definitely strange going on. Now, I hope it's not personal matters, it's something with a family member. I hope that's not the case. I would rather somebody come out and went, when I'm hoping I don't get done for slander here, that Dominic Mackay's not competent, so he's been relieved of his duties. I'd like Dominic Mackay to come out and say, I've left my job because Celtic didn't match my ambition or broke promises that were, made to me. I would rather that, and I'm quite sure Celtic supporters would rather that, rather than the kind of whole cloak and dagger thing. Now, again, they've brought in somebody. Is it something else to blame if the season doesn't go what they want it to be? Or, train wreckage, appointing a manager. Now, back to more train wreckage in the boardroom. As I say, I would rather just somebody come out, whether it be Celtic or Mackay or Postecoglou, and just said, this is what happened. It didn't work. We're now seeking a new chief executive. You know, let's be honest with the fans. Celtic as a club have treated their fans deplorably towards the end of last season and at the start of this season. Again, they've still given, the new manager money to spend, and it's, we have a few months yet before we see if that's value for money. But as I say, it's the cloak and dagger stuff about it. I know maybe there's a legal process and folk can't come out and say actually what happened, but I think it's another kick in the teeth. Because now who's controlling the purse strings? Who's Postecoglou going to say I want X, Y, and Z for January or whatever? It just stinks a wee bit for me.
That's the thing with these type of things. So you hear so many things and you don't know who to believe. Rory, do you think this potentially could be a setback for Celtic in the rebuild to try to? Because obviously last year when you kind of the wheels fell off the train, it's been well documented and things like that. But it looked to be a new start. It looked to be Mackay was coming in for a new background, new ideas, and
I would nip this one in the bud at the moment, just based on the sharpness of the statement and the sensitive kind of nature of the statement they put out. I don't think speculation at this stage, in my opinion, is the route to go down. I think Celtic probably will announce a little bit more as time goes on, but the nature of the statement, it was very short, it was very sweet. The guy's just in the door. He's walked after 3 months for what they're saying is personal reasons. So I would, if it was me personally, I would probably tread a little bit carefully in terms of speculation or this or that, because we don't know what's going on. And as Wilson's quite rightly said, if or yourself, if it is for personal reasons, then we hope everyone's okay and we wish him all the best.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll talk about the performance on the part. Celtic, a 3-0 win. Wilson debuts for the likes of Carter, Vickers. Jota looked really good in his debut. Albion Ayeti getting 2 goals as well. How big a boost of confidence will that be, and what was your kind of thoughts on the overall performance?
Confidence booster for him. He also missed a couple of probably easier chances during the game, and I just think that guy's confidence will be shattered. It'll take him a while to get back to the form that maybe shows why Celtic spent a few quid on him. But as I say, I'm at the stage where Celtic should be beating Ross County at home 3-0. I do fear for Ross County. I think they're really, really poor, to be fair. But Celtic, the squad they've got, Abada missed a few chances. Jota came in and, oh my goodness, does he even touch the ball with his left foot? No, just everything was on his right foot, cutting inside all the time. McGregor and Turnbull looked as steady as they are. Joe Hart's made a really good save at 1-0. But I think in less than a win at home against Ross County, that's where Celtic are. I think they need these building blocks to start. Whereas, because as Rory's pointed out many a time, that's where Celtic struggled last year, was to beat St Mirren's and Dundee United, at home. So the performance-wise was good, comfortable enough at the end. I know that the second and third goals were kind of later on in the game, but they looked very, very comfortable. And as I say, I think the highlight for me was that Kyogo looked as if he was missed yesterday. I don't think there was enough, I don't think Abada and Jota, had the balls to play, in behind, etc. There didn't seem a lot of movement from Ajeti either. It looked as if the shots coming from McGregor and Turnbull at the edge of the box rather than, getting in the box. So I think Kyogo might be a big miss for Celtic over the next 5 or 6 games, whatever it is he's going to miss.
Rory, there's no doubt Celtic are going in the right direction. They're scoring goals. What impresses me about Celtic is that you would think maybe 0-0 at half time last season, that would have been a struggle, but they get the goal obviously through Carter Vickers. It's a lucky goal. It obviously takes a deflection, but there is that intensity to go and push and get the goals. That's what impressed me about that Celtic team. They're showing more kind of personality to go and get more goals, and that's possibly a really good thing going into this stage of the season.
I'm not sure. Wilson uses the word comfortable. I think up until they scored, I think a centre-back shooting for 35 yards kind of sums up where they were at in the game at that point. They were struggling to put the ball in the net. Ross County looked kind of half dangerous on the counter as well. And the goal that they score was incredibly lucky. No. And of course, at Parkhead, when they go 1 up, there's a chance they might score 2, 3, 4, 5. It's getting that first, which is the most difficult thing to do against these teams. And it would have been very interesting to see how the game played out had they not. You know, somebody described it as it wasn't a slice of luck they took, or a slice of luck they took the whole cake in terms of how lucky that goal was. So again, for me, up until that point, they weren't comfortable. And it's interesting. Everyone's talking about the save that Joe Hart makes. That boy's got to score that. It's a sitter, an absolute sitter. He must score that.
Still a save. Still saves it.
He still saves it. He still saves it.
Celtic had about 94% possession until Vickers scored.
My point is, well, you know, you're a big advocate of stats mean nothing. So interesting point. But and my point is that Joe Hart, if Scott Bain, and the argument will be they wouldn't have made that save. There's a big focus on Joe Hart for having saved that. Had it been Scott Bain, whatever else, the focus is on the striker. Joe Hart makes the save. Of course he makes the save, but for me, he's got to score. He's got to make that one each. On Albion Ajeti, you know, Postecoglou comes across as very, very honest, really good guy. He came out before the game and said that, you know, he'd earned his start, he'd been training well and this and that.
He looks a lot lighter. He looks a lot lighter.
Make no mistake about it, though. You know, Celtic have been 6-0 up in games recently and he's not even got a kick. He's not come on the pitch. He was in out of necessity, but he's managed to take his chance and score 2 goals. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets more of a game for there. But Celtic were the better team. They were comfortable in the game. But when it gets to 60, 70 minutes and you've no scored and it's 0-0, you know, everyone's been at Parkhead now. They know what it's like.
Definitely, yeah.
And you know, Celtic are going to have 70, 80, 90% of the possession. That's how the game's always going to play out. Ross County would have set up for that to be the case. But I think at 0-0, it would have been interesting to see if that would 0-0 another 5-10 minutes, if they would have managed to get the breakthrough. But we'll see how it goes. But Celtic have been impressive. You're right; they are going in the right direction, and it doesn't matter how you win. They've won the game. They've won it 3-0, and it's a game last year they might not have won. So, as I've always said, I think it'll be close this season in terms of the league title.
What I thought yesterday as well, obviously with Carter Vickers coming straight in, Juranovic replaces Ralston at right back. That looks to me like Celtic's starting back 4. Like it. Greg Taylor, I would still have a wee bit of reservation about, and I saw a wee bit of criticism coming his way, but it does look as if it's a more settled team, Wilson. It does look as if they're beginning to get their best 11. Obviously, Furuhashi didn't play, would imagine he'd probably be the main striker. But
it'll be interesting when Julian's fit as well, where he quite fits into it as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice, but again, it's one of these things I always look at. I look at it from my kids' point of view with the Celtic players. I don't think there's any superstars there. There's no one that I'd be running into the Celtic shops, you know, can I get him and name and number on the back of my shirt if I was a kid? You know, I think the kind of jigsaw I think all the pieces are there. I just don't know if this season is going to, you know, fit all the pieces together and make them serious challenges. As I say, I think it will possibly be closer than it was last year. But I still don't think it'll be close, if that makes sense. I think there'll be, you know, 10 points in it anyway.
I know how big a fan you are of Callum McGregor. And do you think we could see a wee thing of McGregor moving further forward when McCarthy gets fully fit and McCarthy slots in at the holding role? Because I think he's obviously been signed to start.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I said at the time, you know, to give a guy who's been injured for 2 years over 3 at Everton or whatever it was, a 4-year deal was absolutely bonkers. And maybe that's why Donald Mackay's been sacked, handing out 3 and 4 year contracts, you know, to guys. Because I think it was a massive gamble. I know he came on yesterday. But sometimes I actually felt previously, and I know Celtic were pretty dominant at the time, but sometimes when Scott Brown was missing, Carl McGregor played that role very well. The kind of holding role, that sitting role, because he's good range of passing, etc., and obviously great fitness levels. McCarthy, I'm yet to be convinced. I mean, he was outstanding for a spell at Everton. I'm not doubting the guy's ability, but as I say, my biggest concern is his injury record. That, you know, getting in there to play that role with possibly McGregor, and obviously I think Postecoglou fancies Rogic a wee bit more than previous managers. Is that going to be the 3? And does that 3, you know, does that worry Davis, Kamara, you know, Arfield, Jack, etc.? I don't know.
What was I going to say? The point on my mind's just going totally blank there. McCarthy, sorry, you talked about him having a 4-year deal and things. I think that was just, Joe Hart having a 3-year deal. I think that is a sign of where Celtic were at, though. Mismanagement
just
of the club.
Just get players on the door.
That wasn't a no. Absolutely not. If they wanted to just get players in the door, they would have been giving out 1 and 2 year contracts to players who weren't good enough.
Can they sign shankers?
Aye, exactly. So,
but do you think they wanted these players and that was the...
No, they wanted these players, and these players have went, well, if you want me, you're going to need to give me a 3 or 4 year deal.
Yeah. So, I think their reputation went before their actual ability.
But Celtic were in a good position. Had they won the 10 or had they been more competitive, had they been in a better place...
I don't think Joe Hart and James McCarthy would be playing for Celtic if Celtic won the 10. Absolutely not.
Or they may be, but they would be playing with them on a 2-year contract, not a 4-year contract.
Yeah.
Or a 3-year contract. So, and just to clear up, we don't know if Mackay was sacked,
I was going to say that,
or whether he resigned, or what's went on there. But the statement says he resigned, so we can only assume that. But I do think that Celtic, the mismanagement of the club for such a long period of time, has led to older pros who are established. To not to pacify the fans, because they're going to sign these players if they could anyway, but the length of contract they're giving them, as I touched on in the show before, it's an agent's dream if Celtic was to approach you 3-4 weeks ago as a player, because if they're desperate to get you through the door, you could almost hold them to ransom, because they don't want to go out and sign an unknown quantity in Barkas, or an unknown quantity in a holding midfield player. They want to get established people through the door, or the fans will be happy because of the mismanagement of the club. So, like I said, agents for these players would be rubbing their hands together when Celtic knocked on the door.
But you're saying there about you need to get these established players in. These are Premier League players, and you're going to need to pay Premier League money wages wise to get them in. They're not bringing in James McCarthy and Premier League money to sit on the bench. He must be there to be a starter.
Aye, absolutely. My point is about the length of contract. I think James McCarthy, at this point in his career, given the injury he's had, as Wilson said, would have jumped to Celtic on a 2-year deal, not a problem. However, given the mismanagement of the club, Celtic have went and pinpointed James McCarthy as a potential signing and wanted to sign him. James McCarthy now has leverage to turn around, and his agent has leverage to turn around and go, well, if you want me, I want a 4-year contract. And they're in a position where they're scouring the country, they're scouring other parts. We don't know who they've got their eye on. They might see a potential good player in mainland Europe and going, well, we've took a punt 4 or 5 times now, and we've wasted 5 million on Yeti, we've wasted 5 million on Barkas, we've wasted close to 20 million over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons. Yeah. We need to get somebody through the door who's going to produce the goods. And that player has leverage to go, well, I want a 4-year contract.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the case as well. But we'll move on to Dundee versus Livingston, an interesting game here. Nothing H. Wilson, were you keen to talk about this game?
Absolutely not. Both teams terrible. Shouldn't even go at the 30 seconds that it got on sports scene. Absolutely. It was interesting. I would like to have seen Lee Griffiths, see how he is and see if he would get off the mark, etc. But even by all accounts, listening to snippets on the radio and the highlights, it didn't look up too much for a Premier League match, to be honest. So less said about that game, the better.
Rory, you want to add Dundee and Livingston?
Just one wee thing. I think by all manner means, from what I heard, Dundee were the better side. I watched the highlights, and Griffiths got himself into a couple of good positions. Don't
got us too mixed up, please.
I know. Sorry. And was actually pretty unlucky a couple of times. And Dundee played some good stuff, I think, and have played some good stuff. But my fear for them is that I go back to Neil McCann's tenure. Just no long after I left the club, they were actually really, really good that year, but they couldn't stick the ball in the net.
Yeah. Griffiths will help with that though, surely.
Well, you would like to think so, but that's what they need to avoid this year is playing really, really well and getting a name for being playing quite expansive football, etc., but coming away with 1 point every week, because it's not going to be enough come the business end of the season. So that would be my only fear for Dundee, because I heard against Motherwell as well, they get beat 1-0. I heard they were the better team. I heard they were the better team against Livy. They've got 1 point. So it's not good being the better team all the time if you're not picking up points. But I do believe Dundee will be fine this year. I think they've got enough.
What about Livingston? Obviously 2 goals so far, 1 point, bottom of the league. I know it's really early in the season, but is there potential to be worried for Livingston, Rory?
Well, to quote David Martindale, I guarantee you we will not get relegated this season, is what he said 2 weeks ago. He said that.
Big call, isn't it, when you're not scoring goals?
In an interview.
Is he maybe expecting Rangers to go bust again, and then there's no relegation? Somebody comes up or something. Is that maybe he's getting it there? I don't know. But that is famous last words.
It is. I mean,
I think somebody said that on this show about Kilmarnock with Darryl Megg. I think somebody ridiculous going on. Yeah, that's terrible.
They've got some good players. Pikey, they've got Sibbald, Shinnie, Holt. They've got the players who are good enough to keep them up. It's just whether they can, again, you go back to, it's that mentality of if you lose a few games or you don't get off to a good start, you just can't seem to get that win. Mm-hmm. Even against Aberdeen, they were good for a point before Stryjek, who was the best player on the pitch at Dens Park yesterday, throws one in the net. So you do worry a little bit for Livingston, but David Martindale certainly doesn't.
It doesn't get any easier next Sunday, sorry. Celtic at home. So it's...
Livingston have got a great record against Celtic at Spaghetti Hat, so that'll be a score draw, I would think.
What did you call it? Spaghetti Hat?
Spaghetti Hat. Because of the Tony Macaroni. It's the Spaghetti Hat.
That's tremendous. We'll move into Motherwell 2, Aberdeen 0. Kevin Van Veen scored and Ajala scored for Motherwell 2-0. Big result for them. It moves them up to 4th in the league. Rory, Kevin Van Veen looks a real find. He was very, very good yesterday.
Yeah, he was. And he was very good the first game of the season as well against Hibs. I watched that game when they played at Fir Park, and he looks like a solid signing. He looks aggressive in the air, picks up good positions, penalty box striker. It's interesting, these guys that come up from the likes of your Scunthorpes and things who kind of float around those leagues. Some come up and tear the league apart, and then you get others who come up and kind of kick the back door. So he certainly looks like a find. He looks like a good focal point, gets them up the pitch, almost Michael Higden-esque from his time at Motherwell.
That's what I mean.
So it'd be interesting to see how that one develops, but he certainly looks a good player for them.
Wilson, big result for Motherwell.
Yes, what I did enjoy with the highlights was the kind of goings on between Scott Brown and Tony Watt. They seem to be having a wee pop at each other.
I think that was friendly, Wilson. Do you think it was friendly, or I think there was a little bit more to it?
I think it was friendly until Motherwell went ahead, and then I think Scott Brown took a wee bit, and then I didn't see it on the highlights, but I saw a picture in the paper today of Tony Watt was patting Scott Brown in the head as well, which I thought was good. So a good result for Motherwell. As I say, didn't fancy him at the start of the season either. The big boy up front looked good, but I still can't see Motherwell being a top 6 team. But I can't see that for the life of me. If Aberdeen are not a top 6 team, then there'll be questions asked because they've got some really, really good players as well. But again, they just kind of fell flat yesterday, Aberdeen. I didn't think they really troubled Motherwell at all in any stage. And as I say, now I'm probably looking out for it. But I'm watching Scott Brown again. He looks now maybe 2 yards off the pace. I feel like he get caught a couple of times. He's great when he's involved in the action, but kind of away from the action, he still looks a bit leggy. But as I say, I think Rory, you put a few stats on yesterday about Aberdeen. Beaten in the cup, out of Europe already. I think a couple of home draws they've had as well, and a league defeat to Motherwell. It's not been the best start from Stephen Glass and his kind of new look coaching team. So I think worrying times at Aberdeen as well.
Rory, what's your thoughts on Aberdeen?
I second kind of what Wilson says, just the rundown of their games this season. But like I said about the League Cup, I just don't understand why they fielded a second string team. Aberdeen board and manager and the coaching staff sit down at the start of the season. You can't tell me the Scottish Cup and the League Cup aren't a priority for Aberdeen. Then they play Ross County at home 2 weeks after it, but they decide in a league game which, if they drop some points, isn't going to define their season. Will people still be talking about that League Cup defeat to Wraith Rovers come May if they've not had a good season? Aye, they will. Yeah. So for me, that was a pivotal fixture, and I just couldn't understand the thinking there. Also, I think Stephen Glass comes across a little bit like the kind of modern day manager at times. He sounds good after a game, and he always almost convinces you that as to why they lost and why things happened. But they need to start picking up some points.
We'll move into another 0-0 draw. Wilson, St Mirren 0, Dundee United 0. Give us your honest opinion in that game.
Snooze fest. St Mirren have been really poor. I expected with their signings they'd maybe be okay this year, but obviously not. Both teams very poor. Move on.
Rory, anything to add in St Mirren, Dundee United?
I mean, I backed St Mirren for top six. I still think they might come good. I think they have potential there with Main and Brophy. I don't know, maybe Wilson can give us a little bit more insight as to why Brophy seemed to be so good for a spell.
He looked good yesterday, to be fair. I thought he was
away from the, well, I only seen the highlights, to be fair, and I seen him, it was a good finish, but it was ruled out. But I know it was a Steve Clarke effect, but surely we can't put that down to everybody who performed well at that particular point with Kilmarnock. But Brophy seemed to have a purple patch at Kilmarnock, and everyone was raving about him, got the old Scotland call up, and everyone, when he went to St Mirren, said he was going to be great, and they'd poached him off Kilmarnock, and it was a good bit of business. Hasn't really worked out to this point. He's known for his goal scoring, but he's not scoring many goals. So I'm a little bit disappointed in St Mirren so far. I'm hoping they can pick it up. And like I said, I backed them for top six, and probably would have expected a little bit more out of Brophy, to be honest.
Wilson, what's your kind of thoughts on him and Brophy's start?
Brophy was really good at Kilmarnock, and you're right about a purple patch. But I actually think, he just loved to shoot. Any chance he got, whether it was angles in the box or whatever, he always took the chance to shoot. He was always very confident in his own ability, and I think that's maybe where he's, again, one of these players. Sometimes you just fit and you settle into a club and you do well. There was obviously stuff going behind the scenes at Kilmarnock, but I kind of got the impression, Eamon Brophy thought he was better than what he actually was, because he had that wee purple patch. A few boys like that at Kilmarnock that's since left after the Steve Clarke era. And I know he went to St Mirren and he got injured and he was out for a bit. But there is a player in there. There is a player, and I think, to be fair, on a Kilmarnock St Mirren, I think that's his level.
Do you think that just comes down to Steve Clarke being a bit of a cut above managerial-wise, knowing people's qualities, how to get the best out of them, and that's why so many players who you would consider average is probably harsh, but middle of the road Premier League Scottish players, Scottish Premier League players, kind of prospered at that time.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And as you say, and you've not been in this situation, Rory, see when, everyone likes a manager and everything's going well, and there's maybe 3,000 more punters coming through the door. You're not going out to defend for 90 minutes against a Celtic. Rangers are going out there to have a pop at them and try and get some good results. And, and winning's everything. Winning's absolutely everything. And when you're, in a good team, and quite easily, Kilmarnock, not that they had the money, but Steve Clarke went out and got a few players that wanted to come to Kilmarnock at that time. So all those players had to up their game to make sure they remained in the team. And as I say, Eamon Brophy was part of that. He was a goal scorer. He hit the penalties as well when he played. He was a bit of a kind of fan's favourite with the kids as well, because he was nicknamed the Wolf and all that. And I think he was perfectly suited. And I know you all laugh, but it was a wee bit like Greg Stewart. Greg Stewart's best football he's probably ever played in his career was at Kilmarnock. He was absolutely outstanding at Kilmarnock. And then I know you're not going to knock back the money, he probably got to Aberdeen and Rangers, but has he ever played a consistent run of games? Has he ever kind of reached the dizzy heights when he was playing with a semi-successful Kilmarnock team? And as I say, Brophy maybe falls into the same category.
No, he was good. He was good for Dundee as well. Greg Stewart, very good as well, but similar level to Kilmarnock and produced kind of the same goods. Now, I was just interested because Max Power's another one. No, Max Power.
Alan Power.
Alan Power's another one who I've seen a couple of times for St Mirren. I watched him for Kilmarnock in the playoffs against Dundee last year. Just looks a different player for Steve Clarke's time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but as you say, I mean, no disrespect to Jim Goodwin or whatever, or Alex Darren, these guys, but when Steve Clarke's your manager, you're expecting him to be just maybe up there, kind of in between that proper elite managers and top managers category. But I think Kilmarnock was right on the crest of a wave. I think everyone performed well. If you look, Stephen O'Donnell, I think was meant to, no disrespect to Motherwell, I think Stephen O'Donnell was meant to be getting a better move. Daniel Backman's went to play in the Premiership and play in the Euros. Stuart Finley's went off to the MLS. Greg Taylor went to Celtic. All these guys from that season have possibly, could argue, on to bigger and better things.
Jones as well, he went to...
Jordan Jones got a move to Rangers. Greg Stewart, I think, went to Rangers via Aberdeen. Eamon Brophy, kind of...
I thought it would go, but I thought it would go bigger than St Mirren. I kind
of sideways
championship or something like that.
as I say, it was that. But again, that was, as I say, we're just riding the crest of a wave. The success, and yeah, maybe having a kind of elite level manager at the time helped.
We'll move on to
Dundee United. Look, by the way, sorry, just to touch on them, kind of missed them out. I think they're ticking along quite nicely. I think they'll improve this season. I don't know if they'll quite reach top 6, but Tam Courts is another one. He comes across a little bit like Stephen Glass, but they seem to be getting better results on the pitch for what they're expected to do. So they're ticking along quite nicely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I did worry for Dundee United, especially losing Shankland and a new coach, things like that. But yeah, I think they've started better than I thought they would. But we'll see if it continues. We'll move into the final game of the weekend, was the Edinburgh Derby. Rory, it finished 0-0 between Hearts and Hibs, but there was little between both teams. It was a very entertaining game, I thought.
It was. I enjoyed watching the game, actually. Unlike the Old Firm, where I thought, comparing the two derbies, where I thought there was a lack of quality in the final third, I don't think there was a lack of quality in the final third today. I just think the goalkeepers performed really, really well. I think it was a good advert for the game. Up here, it was a big crowd, good atmosphere, good build-up. Almost had like a kind of English Premier League feel about it. The build-up, the crowd, the noise, just everything. And I thought the quality was good. I thought first half it was a bit frantic, first 25, 30 minutes, a lot of long diagonal balls kind of running out the pitch and things. But as the game settled down, it became a really good contest. It's just a shame from a neutral perspective that we didn't get more goals. I thought there would have been goals in that game, but I think on another day there could have been. They just come up against two really good goalkeepers.
Yeah, definitely. Wilson, what was your thoughts on the Edinburgh Derby?
Well, I only listened to. I was on the golf course this morning for a long time, let me tell you. And I only listened maybe the last 20 minutes, and going by what the commentators in the BBC were saying, it was a tale of two goalkeepers, which, I didn't know much about the Hibs goalkeeper, but with Craig Gordon, it doesn't really surprise me. As I said before, I think he's excellent. And it's some start from Hearts. I think if Hearts played, Celtic, Aberdeen, Hibs, in the first kind of few games, which is big games. So, and I know, I was kind of tipping Robbie Nielsen probably to be the first in the sack race this year. He's had a great start, not all credit to him. And, is that a shrewd signing, Barry Mackay coming in? I know he had a kind of decent career at Rangers and then got a move to Swansea, bringing him back. Is that the way? Although I was surprised that Halliday didn't play today. I thought that would be a perfect game for Andy Halliday. A kind of derby because he's robust and energetic and that. So team selection was quite strange, but I think probably both managers will be happy with a point going on the kind of the bits and bobs that I've saw.
Yeah, Macy's save for Gary Mackay-Stevens, outstanding.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
It's unbelievably good.
Well, I'll be tuning in to Stevie Thompson once we're finished on the show.
Yeah, really, it's one of those ones where I always think goalkeepers suffer for replays. In real time, a nice finish or whatever looks really good on a replay, but when you slow everything down for a goalie, you think you could have saved it, but in real time, that Messi save from Gary Mackay-Steven was outstanding.
Yeah, I thought it was a really entertaining game. Both sides were very even. I thought I was a bit surprised, not surprised, but you're saying there about the quality in the final third. I thought Nisbet had a bit of a poor game. I thought there was a few chances he should have scored, Rory.
It was one thing I do notice about Nisbet, and I wouldn't disagree with you about that, by the way. I think there's times he could have done better. He's very unselfish. He makes a lot of unselfish runs, and there's opportunities in the game. For example, he cuts one back to Kyle McGuinness. He's more than his rights to shoot, and he does a lot of unselfish work. So it's one of those ones where you look at Kevin Nisbet. He still contributes to the team when maybe he's not. He's all fire and best, scoring goals, assisting, etc., etc. You're still getting a shift out of him. He's still putting players under pressure. He's still making runs for others. He's still creating space for Boyle. I think that gets missed a lot of the time. Boyle had a lot of space, and that comes from Kevin Nisbet knowing where to go and knowing where to move and dragging people out of position. And Boyle looked quite dangerous at times, and I think that Nisbet played a part in that. But in front of goal and that final wee bit, I would agree with it. It was probably fell below his normal standards today.
We'll move into the action in the Championship. We'll go through the results quickly. Arbroath 4, Hamilton 0, Ayr 3, Dunfermline 1, Inverness 3, Partick 1, Kilmarnock 1, Morton 0, and Wraith 0, Queen of the South 1. Rory, Wraith 0, Queen of the South 1, you were at the game. Tell us a bit about it.
It was a lively enough start. It was quite end to end. Queen scored after 10 minutes. But after that, it was a little bit drab. Queen's clipped the bar after about maybe 20 minutes from a corner. Queen's probably should have doubled the lead at some point in the half. Wraith started with a kind of 4-1-4-1. They sacrificed a sitting midfielder at half time, brought on our second striker and went 4-4-2, but huffed and puffed. But I genuinely feel, and I've watched Wraith a few times this season, they've been excellent, play really good football. I like John McGlynn. His teams often do that, but they didn't really show much of their identity yesterday. They were really quite poor. And one player that stood out to me was Harry Cochrane. I thought, young boy breaks through at Hearts at 17, 16 possibly even. And I've not been there breaking through that young, but he had a couple of loan spells, and I've been there where you go on loan to the league below, and there's almost that expectation. You come for a Rangers, a Celtic, a Hearts, a Hibs, everyone's looking at you to kind of, and maybe getting those shackles off and going and getting a permanent move to a Queen of the South. He'll maybe kind of come into his own, but he was magnificent yesterday, really was, in breaking up the play and grinding out that 1-0 win. Zanata showed flashes for Wraith in the first half of real Premier League quality, but the young boy at 17 on loan from Motherwell, Max Johnson, played up against him in the first half, was booked right on the cusp of half time. Alan Johnson then moved him to left back the second half, and Wally Gibson to right back at 37. And Zanata was never to be seen again. That little bit of experience managed to just take him out the game, and maybe that's why managers are looking at Zanata going, maybe not just now, maybe needs to do a little bit more. So I think over the piece, hard fought away win, 1-0 was probably a bit right. If it was one each, would you have argued? Probably not. But Queen's probably in the end just did enough.
Wilson, what was your result of the weekend in the Championship?
Well, obviously, Kilmarnock winning a slog at home to Morton. But again, I think the result of the weekend, and hope the Kilmarnock fans forgive me for this, I think it's there. No. I think the Fairman have struggled, to be fair, but it always kind of irritates me a wee bit, that as soon as the manager leaves or resigns, then here all of a sudden find a win and a performance from somewhere. So I've spoken about this in the show before. I think it was Scotty McLaughlin that shot me down in flames. That I think sometimes players go out, if they don't like the manager, they don't particularly try as hard as they possibly could. And then the manager leaves and all of a sudden they become, Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. So I think his result, after David Hopkin leaving this week, don't think it was a surprise result because the Fairman have struggled, but that for me, I smell a rat there, put it that way.
Rory, we've got to mention a Bros magnificent 4-0 win over Hamilton. They've had a great start to the season, but that is some result to beat Hamilton, who've obviously just come down 4-0 at home.
Aye, absolutely. I'm going to steal Wilson's expression from earlier. They are very much riding the crest of a wave, and the boy Joel Newbley up front on loan from Livingston, he looks different gravy. He's really, really good. They've got Nicky Lowe there as well.
He scored, didn't he?
Scored at the weekend. He's a rat in midfield. He wins the ball back so well, but the quality he's got with the left foot is second to none. He's really, really good. Great quality with that left peg. The way Dick Campbell sets up, he gets that 5 across the midfield. And like I said, if you're going to set up 4-5-1, you need your striker to be mobile. You need him to be able to hold the ball up, and you need him to have quality to bring others into the game. And Joel Newbley fits that bill to a T. Be very interesting. Tell you, see if they can. I think they'll do well between now and January. And I think a big part of their season will be, I know it's early doors to say this, but it'll be see if they can hang on to him in January. But I certainly feel if Livingston find themselves where they are at the moment come January, they'll be very quick to get him back in the door at the Spaghetti Head.
Wilson, we love Dick Campbell in this show, and we've got to say we're happy with the start he's made. He's done really well so far.
Yes, I think I think the latter of the season goes on. I think that's where our growth tend to struggle. Towards the kind of latter stage of the season, but get the points on the board just now, and see where you go. And Dick's a lovely guy. He was great on the show with us. And his career in Scottish football speaks for itself. So good luck to him.
Yeah,
he was dancing on the pitch at East End Park a couple of weeks ago when they beat them 4-0. Class.
I saw him run on the pitch at Somerset one day. Wasn't he dancing? Let me tell you. Run on to confront the ref.
We'll move into League One. Just run through the results. Alaba 2, Falkirk 0, Cove Rangers 1, Montrose 1, the Barton 5, East Fife 0, Peterhead 3, Clyde 2, and Queen's Park 0, Airdrie 0. Rory, what was your result of the weekend in League One?
I'd probably go with Alaba, to be honest. They've had a bit of an indifferent start to the season. Barry Ferguson, I think, going in there surprised a few.
Yeah.
But Falkirk flying high, doing really well. It's that old adage, isn't it? They kind of, they're full-time, they're part-time, there's that bit of pressure. But I think that was a big win for Barry Ferguson. Bit of a statement in terms of, being able to beat a Falkirk. which then now on the back of that, can they go and beat others around them and build a bit of momentum? So I would say from going into the game, momentum-wise, everything was pointing towards a Falkirk win, but the Wasps managed to get it over the line.
Yeah, it's a wee boost as well. Obviously, Cove and Queen's Park obviously not winning as well. It does give them a bit more of a kind of
Falkirk will be kicking themselves.
Aye, definitely. I've got to go with Dumbarton 5-0 against East Fife. Friend of the show, Stevie Farrell's. I think that was the first win of the season, but that's some way to get you off to a win.
No, they beat Montrose the other week. Remember?
Aye, well, you proved me wrong there again. Aye, 5-0. That's some result to beat East Fife, obviously at home. Wilson, what was your result of the weekend in League One?
Possibly Airdrie's result. I think Queen's Park are one of the favourites to win that league, so I think Airdrie got a point there. Looks a decent result. Montrose Cove is a draw. Is that a surprise result? Possibly not. What isn't a surprise is David Goodwillie scoring for Clyde. It's not a surprise
again
either. But I'll go with Airdrie's draw at Queen's Park.
League 2, we saw Albion 2, Cowdenbeath 1, Annan 1, Stenhousemuir 2, Kelty Hearts 1, Elgin 1, Stirling 1, Forfar 0, Instron 0, Edinburgh City 1. Wilson, what was your result in League 2?
Well, obviously, because I always mention Chrissy Johnson on the show, I always look out for his results, but that was a bad result for them at home against Steny, so I think that's a good result for Stenhousemuir, so I would go with that one.
Rory, what's your result in League 2?
I don't know if there was really any. Kelty dropping points was a bit of a shock, but generally speaking, I suppose Annan were flying high, but Wilson's already picked them. I'll probably say Albion Rovers. They've kind of got a reputation of struggling most years and things like that, and it was a bit of a basement battle. These battles at the start at this point in the season can dictate whether your season's a little bit easier and you can be a mid-table team as opposed to that kind of fight for relegation every week. So, a close run game, but over the piece, maybe go with that one.
Yeah, I'll go for Stirling 1 Forfar 0. Friend of the show, Kevin Rukowitz, where he's second one since he came on the all-time 11. So I'm taking the praise for that. That's a big result for them as well. Forfar, probably a match, probably two similar teams at kind of similar level, but Stirling beating them at home's a big result. But we'll move into what's coming up this week. We have a couple of European games to talk about. First of all, Celtic go to Spain to take on Real Betis. Wilson, give us your predictions for that.
I was saying today, and I was golfing today with, let's say, some mixed team supporters, and I said today I don't fancy either of them to win this first game. I think the Rangers home to Lyon, Celtic away to Betis.
Rangers are home to Lyon and Celtic away to Betis. Yeah.
I think Celtic will get tanked. I think that could be 2 or 3-0. I just think the volume of games, you just see, and I know that's their job, blah, 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 but the amount of games they're playing, I just think, when they're changing this kind of system and you guys are trying to find the system, it takes them several games, and that's fine. That'll work against St Mirren's and Ross Counties, etc. Does it work against good teams like Real Betis? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Now, obviously, for the coefficient, I hope Celtic get a result. But no, I think comfortable 2-3-0 Betis this week for me.
I'm opposite. I fancy Celtic to win on Thursday. I don't think Betis are. I don't think they've started very well. Celtic scored an early goal.
I think without Kyogo, I think Celtic could struggle for goals though. Even over the next 5 or 6 games, Allen maybe beating teams 5 or 6-0, it could be.
Talking about the coefficient, Wilson, I'm assuming you want all Scottish teams to come away with 3 points.
No, just the green coefficient. Sorry. No. When it comes to Europe, I'm equally as neutral. I've always liked Lyon, so we soft spot for them. No, not at all.
Rory, do you give Celtic a chance in Spain on Thursday?
I'm probably somewhere between yourself and Wilson. I don't think they'll get tanked, as Wilson put it. Betis have had a very indifferent start to the season. They've yet to win a game in the domestic league. So I think if Celtic go there and play the way they potentially can, I think they may get caught out with the whole all-out attack at some point in the European campaign. But I think they've got a chance to nick a point, and I think a point they would snatch a hand off for right now. So I think it'll probably be a relatively close game. Celtic will set up pretty tight to start with, but as they grow into the game, I think they're capable of getting at a point. But it's notoriously difficult in Europe to go away and get a result. So we shall see.
Wee quiz question. Can you remember to tell me the Real Betis manager?
Oh, that's a good question.
Joaquin.
No. Won the
That was
he's
total guess.
He's won the Premier League.
The Scottish Premier League.
English Premier
League. He's won the English Premier League. Let's go for Laurent Blanc.
No.
Is he Spanish?
No, I don't think so. No, he isn't. I think he's South American. That probably gives it away.
South American. He's won the Premiership.
Yeah. Don't be sitting on your phone.
No,
Pascal Sigan.
Nah, it is.
No, don't tell us. Let's leave that with us. South American, and he's won the English Premier League.
Right, we'll come back to that at the end. We'll talk about Rangers' game against Lyon. Rory, it's probably the hardest game in the group, but it could potentially be a harder game with no Goldson and probably no Hollander either.
Aye, I mean that's going to make it more difficult without a shadow of a doubt. Lyon have started better than Real Betis has domestically, so it'll be a tough game. I do believe that Rangers will feel that they can take maximum points from these games at home. Whether that is realistic or not, I don't pretend to know a lot about Lyon and their style of play and how they play. But I think Rangers are capable if they turn up on the night. Again, I do feel that a draw wouldn't be their worst result in the world. So I'll stick my neck out on the line and say a credible draw for both Scottish teams on the European games.
Okay, Wilson, what do you think about Rangers' chances at home to Lyon? Are you excited to see your old pal Dembele back in Glasgow?
Well, is he not at Atletico Madrid?
No, he's at Lyon.
Where's that thing up?
He was in loan at Atletico Madrid. He's back at Lyon. I believe he scored yesterday, actually.
Oh well, I'm quite sure Ibrox will know that he's back playing with the noise that will be generated. I mean, again, I'm probably no less about French football than anyone. But I just look at this. You know, they had the money to spend 22 million on Dembele, so I imagine they've got some really good players on their team.
They also have another Celtic player, ex-Celtic player on their team, who scored today as well. Can you tell me?
Is it Marc Shankland? I know he used to play there.
Nah, it's not Marc Shankland.
Another ex-Celtic player on their team.
Another ex-Celtic player, centre half. I'm good with the quiz questions.
Charlie Mulgrew, no?
No, it's not Charlie Mulgrew.
That's a good one. I need to leave that with me.
Right, we'll come back to that as well. But
no, as I say, I'm basing it on Lyon having that kind of money to spend in one player. I'm thinking they must have some good players within the thing. And I think, just as you touched on, I mean, I'm actually meant to ask this at the time. You put on the chat yesterday about Hollander's injury. It didn't show it in Sports Scene last night. I don't know if it showed it in Sports Scene today. I know there's two different kind of shows. Was it as bad as you?
It didn't look.
It was as bad as it looked, but I don't know. I get why it didn't show it.
I don't know either, but
I would think without Hollander and Goldson, I think that could potentially.
Well, Simpson's
injured as well, is it not?
Simpson's not in the Europa League squad, so it's probably going to be Balogun, and I would say maybe Bassey would play at centre back. And it's just I don't know.
Could Tavernier play there and Patterson at right back?
Possible. I think Patterson's still isolating, is it not?
Was he isolating? No, was he not isolating pre the Moldova game?
But was there not? How did he? Was he not out of the Scotland squad due to that as well? Was he injured?
He missed the second. I think he was injured.
Aye.
Well, who was the Celtic centre back? Sorry, go back to this quiz question. I think about who was the Celtic centre back that left, kind of annoyed the fans. I can't remember his name, and he went not so long ago. Is it him? No, I'm maybe not even describing that very well.
Don't know your thought.
I can't remember the boy's name.
Was it Christopher Ayer that wanted a wee bit more challenging after losing 7-0 firm games in the bounce? His part of this week in the telly.
Nah, I don't know who you're talking about.
Centre half
angered the fans.
Aye, he didn't turn up, or he didn't.
It wasn't competent.
No, that's terrible.
Marc.
He just didn't turn up.
No,
running about with a league winners medal in the season.
I'll come back to it. I can't mind the boys'
He
name.
played at the Euros as well, if that helps you.
Who for?
Jason Denier, no?
Jason Denier, good answer. Jason Denier. He scored, yeah. I'll just go run through a few of the Lyon players as well that are potentially going to line up on Thursday. Xherdan Shaqiri, Hossam Aouar, who's been linked heavily with Arsenal, Karol Toko Ekambi, who obviously played for Villarreal against Rangers. They've got a few good players in that team. They're certainly a team to take seriously.
Well, I'm gonna stick my neck out and say both Old Firm teams to lose this week.
I would say a draw would be a good result for Rangers. Obviously,
I think a draw. If I was betting money, I would bet the draw. But just because Rory's went with 2 draws, I'll go for Betis and Lyon to win.
I can see Dembele scoring. Do you know that?
I'll see 1 each in both games. I can see Dembele scoring. He's got a good record against Rangers.
He's got a great.
He's a good player, isn't he?
He's that's.
Well, I can tell you he'll be first on the chat if that happens.
But we will, before we talk about what's coming up in the channel this week, do you want to hazard a guess who the Real Betis manager is?
Right, I've got a question. Can you give us a clue? Is it a South American player or a South American manager that's won the Premiership?
South American manager. I don't.
Boyata, sorry, that's what I was thinking.
Boyata, no, same nationality, but it was just.
Did he annoy the fans or something? No,
he did. I think he
did something. Did he know?
They refused to play a game or
something like that.
Something like that.
Anyway, sorry, that was annoying me.
He won the Premier League.
And he won South America. It must be Pellegrini.
Manuel
Pellegrini. The Premier League is South American. He's a manager.
Manuel Pellegrini.
But
he is the Real Betis manager.
Good quiz question.
Very
quiz question.
Jerome Boateng plays for Lyon as well. I'm just seeing here. So there's a lot of good.
Can I change my mind? That's some team, mate. That's a Champions League team.
That's what I was just going to say. I didn't know they'd signed Shaqiri as well. Is that the one for Liverpool?
Yes, yeah, Shaqiri for Liverpool.
They must be paying some money. Did Boateng not get released on a free for Bayern Munich and had the pick of wherever he wanted to go?
Yeah, went to Lyon. Yeah, it's a few big players in that team. Lucas Paqueta as well, who was at. I think he was at.
Never heard of him.
I think he was at AC Milan. But it's going to be a big
again, it's under the lights at Ibrox. Plenty of teams have came there and fallen with the noise and whatnot.
Not the disco lights.
Not the disco light. You can't afford them. Disco lights are John McGann. Disco lights are John McGann. Let's have the lights. And you think Don Mackay's mismanaging things? Bloody hellfire.
No, we are going to wrap up the show on that, but we want to just say as well, before we go any further, we've done a poll on the West of Scotland Player of the Month, and Lewis Morrison from Hurlford won it with 36% of the votes. So congratulations to him, and we will be doing another Player of the Week next week, but we're also going to have an extra show on Friday with the boys for Arvid Nedal. We'll announce who's going to be on the show yet, but we are looking forward to that. Wilson, Rory, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone who's tuned in. Please follow our social media pages and subscribe to us on YouTube and our podcast channels. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you soon. Cheers.